Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has struggled to explain why Britain is wholly opposed to human rights abuses when they're committed by Russia or China, but is happy to turn a blind eye when they're committed by our allies in the Middle East. This is Labour MP Chris Bryant grilling Truss in a hearing of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee.
You were talking about authoritarian regimes earlier, and you've said that the UK should be a robust counterweight to authoritarian regimes and that we are ending our dependency on authoritarian regimes for energy. How would you describe the Gulf states?
I would describe the Gulf states as partners of the United Kingdom. We're currently negotiating a trade deal with the GCC. Now, is every country that we work with exactly in line with United Kingdom policy on everything? No, they're not, but they are important allies of the United Kingdom.
Hang on, Mohammed bin Salman, responsible for the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, no? Yeah?
What I would say is that Saudi Arabia
is
an important partner of the United Kingdom.
81 executions all on one day in Saudi Arabia, and you don't think that that's an authoritarian regime?
What I'm focused on is making sure that we are dealing with the major threats to the world. The number one threat we're dealing with at the moment is the threat from Russia. In order to do that, we need to make sure that we have alternative energy sources. And one of the key sources of energy is the Gulf region. We're not dealing in a perfect world. We're dealing in a world where we need to make difficult decisions. And I think it is right that we build that closer trading relationship with the Gulf states.
How would you describe the Gulf states? I would describe them as partners of the United Kingdom. End of story. Partners of the United Kingdom. We don't have to ask any more questions. So it's obvious when it comes to China and Russia, our foreign policy is motivated by opposition to authoritarianism. We hate them because they don't share our values. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, all of a sudden our foreign policy is motivated not by our values, but by our interests. So are we really supposed to believe that the UK government has this completely incoherent approach to the world? So our opposition to China and Russia, that's purely moral, that's purely ethical. But when it comes to the Gulf, magically, suddenly it's about interests. Perhaps the reason we're opposed to Russia and China also could be about interests and not about the moral commitments of our government. Liz Truss's answers got even more embarrassing.
In the Gulf trade document that you just published, you say the government will continue to hold those who violate human rights to account. How are you doing that in the Gulf states at the moment?
Well, these issues are raised regularly with the relevant ministers and leaders who we meet in the Gulf states.
You have
what
personally?
Our aim, I have personally, yes.
Well, your spokesman said that you hadn't. So what's the last human rights issue that you raised with a Gulf state leader?
I'd have to come back to the committee on the precise timing of that, but I certainly
anything.
have
Just
raised
tell us
it.
anything that you said on human rights.
Well, I certainly have raised it when I was in...
Go on, tell us one now.
I'm just trying to remember my most recent visit, but I can assure you I have raised it, and I will write to you with the details.
You can't remember a single human rights issue that you've raised with a Gulf state leader?
Well, I've raised particular issues when I've been in the Gulf about human rights issues. Well, I'm not going to go into all the details of private conversations, which I will come back to you on in due course.
She can't name a single human rights abuse that she's raised with Saudi Arabia. Could it be any more obvious that she doesn't care? It's also completely inconsistent what she said. I'm not going to share with you details of private conversations. And then she says, oh, I'll have to email you details of those private conversations. Either they're private or they're not, right? So you've tied yourself in knots. And the obvious conclusion is you have never raised a human rights issue with Saudi Arabia. Right? I've raised all sorts of human rights issues. Name one. She can't name one. I bet you could, ask most people in the street, name a Saudi Arabian human rights abuse. Most people can talk about Jamal Khashoggi. They can talk about hanging people. Liz Truss, suddenly, cat's got a tongue. Aaron, I want your take on this. I mean, I do think Chris Bryant did a good job there. And I do really think that showed in a conversation the amoral nature, the absolutely amoral nature of British foreign policy.
Yeah. Also, the way she sort of purses her lips upwards when she's being challenged, almost rising like a little souffle gently. Very strange. And a very strange set of responses. Jamal Khashoggi, it should be mentioned, by the way, Michael, was a dual national. He was a US national as well. This is what I find really remarkable. It's a US national, a journalist at the Washington Post. We're talking about a really serious person, one of the most serious public intellectuals in the Arab world. Like I say, a dual national who's chopped up in an embassy. And that's seemingly not a major issue. And I think one of the reasons why people like Trump, or even Farage, is he says, yep, we're going to work with the Saudis. We have a completely amoral foreign policy. He even once said that, we're no angels either. And I think people go, you know what, at least this guy's honest. Whereas you have the default amongst the British political establishment and the Democrats in the United States to say, we are the avatars of democracy, we're the defenders of human rights and freedoms around the world, but we're working with an autocratic theocracy which, murders 70 people a day. Yeah, sorry about that. But these two things aren't incongruent. So I think, in a way, the electorate probably is aware of realpolitik. I think the electorate can probably swallow the argument, well, there's an energy crisis, sorry, we do have to work with countries that we don't otherwise want to work with to guarantee energy security. Although, of course, that doesn't apply to Venezuela or Iran, notice, just Saudi Arabia. Doesn't work with Tehran. I think people would swallow that, but I think it's the dressing up as the moral and ethical superiority, which just comes so easily to the British ruling class, because that's been their post-imperial default. You, of course, oversaw this empire, which was 25% of the planet's surface area, 20% of its population. Well, you have to pretend somehow that you're the good guys and you're defending liberty. How can you be defending liberty when a quarter of the planet's surface area is your empire? We were defending democracy. Well, the Indian Army in the Second World War, they didn't have much choice when they were fighting on the side of the British Empire. Of course, thank God they were, because it defeated the Wehrmacht and the Third Reich. But that wasn't democracy. It wasn't freedom. So this lie is fundamental, Michael, actually, to the political psyche of our establishment, because otherwise, how do you make sense of Britain's past?
All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinising establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media. Join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.